Think we're live, all looking good. Hi guys, welcome back to Solo Club. Normally I wear headphones when I do these live streams. I've just realized literally just before going live that I don't need to wear them, and it looks a bit weird. I've got these great big cans on, which aren't the most attractive. I mean, they're not bad looking, but they look a bit odd. It's just a bit of a strange look when I'm doing these live streams, partly because I don't need to hear anything. No, I don't get any audio feedback. So from now on, I'm not going to wear these headphones. I think it looks a bit more normal then, a little bit less strange. But yeah, thank you for joining live. If you're joining live, if you're watching this in the future, thank you very much for doing that as well. I'm really enjoying doing these live streams, guys. I still don't know what is the best time to do them, although I do know I need to keep them consistent. And I've had a couple of comments from people saying I'd love to come on these streams, but I don't know when they're happening because they keep changing. So that's taken on board, don't worry. But I might tweak the start time again just to see if we can get a few more people on. But very quick sales pitch, as always. Sales pitch. If you haven't checked out my Substack newsletter list yet, please do. It's a completely free email newsletter that I send out every Friday, and it's a little bit like this, but obviously in written form. So I talk about this industry, and if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe, but it's worth checking out, trust me. So as always, there are two things that I want to talk about today. The first thing is it's about aroll. It's about filming to camera like I'm doing now. And the second thing, as always, is your questions. So we've got people slowly coming into the room now. Honestly, the best thing about these live streams is your questions. The thing that I do at the start hopefully is interesting and, beneficial for people who are watching this stuff. But always, every single time I've done this, the best content comes from your questions. And you can ask me anything, honestly. The tech stuff, obviously, that's for Mark Ellis Reviews. But in terms of everything else, I'm open. It's open season. You can ask me anything about this business, about content creation, about being a YouTuber, about running your own business. If you've got a personal question for me, within reason, you can ask that. Trust me, I get the strangest questions and comments on YouTube anyway. So I've seen it all, basically. So you can't offend me. Well, you probably can offend me, actually. Don't offend me. That wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, I'm waffling. So firstly, I want to talk very quickly. I think we're straight. I think the table is straight. I think the line here is straight as well. So regular viewers who know that I've had issues with balancing the camera for some reason on this set seems to be fixed. Anyway, I want to talk about aroll, and the whole purpose of these live streams and these videos and this channel in general really is to be completely honest with you, and warts and all, in terms of what it's like to be a YouTuber, what it's like to do this behind the scenes. Because when you watch a channel like Mark Ellis Reviews and the more polished videos that I do on Solo Club, all you see is the edit. You see the finished result. So you don't see any of the stuff that's been left on the cutting room floor. That's obvious. But what you also don't see is what happens during the filming. And this isn't so much the case for B-roll, because B-roll is you walking around with a camera, getting shots of products and stuff like that. That's all fairly innocuous, and that's what it is. It's the filming of the A-roll that I think isn't talked about enough, because you do see the completely polished-ish version of what that person's done. And normally in YouTube land, that's 8 minutes, 10 minutes, maximum possibly 20 minutes if it's a long video. But obviously that isn't how long that person was filming for. It's normally cut down from a much longer shoot. And it's during those shoots that you don't see it. You don't see any of that stuff that happens. I've just reminded myself, actually, guys, start putting questions in the comment section now. You don't have to write them down. I'm not going to look at them yet, but I will turn to them as soon as I'm finished waffling on about this stuff. So fill it. Go on, just put as many questions in there as you can, and I'll go through them afterwards. Anyway, getting back to the A-roll thing. So I was looking earlier, and I've made about 600 videos on Mark Ellis Reviews, which is a mixture of long-form stuff and more recently short-form videos. So I've made a lot of content over the last 3 years, and until now, or until perhaps about 6 months ago, filming A-roll wasn't a problem. Now I'm experiencing some challenges, which I think you're going to find interesting, particularly if you've tried it yourself. So if you're not familiar with what A-roll is, it is this. It's talking to camera It's called A-roll because it's the main body of the video. It's the thing where you're delivering the value and talking and giving your audience hopefully what they want. And in YouTube, generally speaking, unless you've got a team, it is just exactly what I'm doing now. I'm in this room, I'm by myself. There's a camera in front of me on a tripod. There'll be a mic somewhere, they're obviously here in this case. And A-roll is you talking to that camera and going from the start of the video to the end of the video and getting to the end in any way you can, basically. And as I mentioned earlier, to begin with, I really enjoyed that process. In the old studio at home, which was the back bedroom, I remember getting all set up, getting the camera ready, putting all my sound deadening stuff out in front of me, and really enjoying it, and also not really thinking too much about my performance, just cracking on with it, really. Now, I'm much more conscious of what I'm doing and what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And just very quickly as well, going back to the whole premise of A-roll, if you've not done this before, and if you have done this before, you'll know what I mean by this. It's completely unnatural. The first time you sit down in a room on your own with a camera in front of you and you just stare into that lens and start talking, it's weird. And I'll tell you what, guys, it doesn't get any less weird the more videos you make and the more professional you become in terms of running the YouTube business. If anything, it gets a bit stranger because you're very conscious of the fact that it is just you talking effectively to yourself. But what I've found over the last, like I say, probably the last 6 months, is that I've got less confident doing it. So I've struggled, really struggled at times with filming A-roll. And the best or the worst example of this happened yesterday. So I shot a video yesterday, which is for a big thing next week, which will become clear when it goes live. And normally, to put some context around this, a YouTube video A-roll shoot for Mark Ellis Reviews would take on average between 30 to 40 minutes ish. That's a pretty decent, pretty average shooting length for me. This one took an hour and a half, and the video wasn't any longer. It wasn't a longer outline that I was working from. And if anything, it should have been a bit shorter because it was quite more of an overview of stuff. It should have been straightforward. Everything was lined out in front of me. All of the stuff I needed to talk about, all the stats, all the key highlights that I needed to mention. It was all there. But it took me an hour and a half to film this thing. And for the first time ever, I maxed out a memory card on my camera. One of the cameras, my B cam, ran out of battery halfway through. Those two things have never happened during an A-roll shoot. And so immediately, when I swapped out the memory card, I remember thinking, I've never had to do that in 3 years of doing this. I've never maxed out a memory card, and quite a big memory card, for one A-roll shoot. I don't think it's ever happened with B-roll either, maybe once or twice. So immediately I knew something. I knew that kind of illustrated how bad it was. I knew how bad it was because I was having a really hard time of it. And you might be sitting there thinking, why did it take an hour and a half? And the reason for it is because I was constantly starting and stopping. So I don't work from a script. It's not a strict script. It's more of a list of bullet points that I riff off, basically. So I'd have the camera there, and just below the camera normally, I'll have an iPad or an iPhone with those bullet points, and I read them, get into my head what I'm talking about, look at the camera, and start talking. And normally that works okay. You know, you have to do a few reshoots here and there, which is why an 8 or 10 minute YouTube video takes 30 or 40 minutes to film, because you do stop and start a bit, you decide on different things you're talking about, you waffle on a bit and go down a few cul-de-sacs, but that's fine because you get rid of all that stuff in the edit. That's completely normal. What was happening yesterday is that I wasn't wandering off down cul-de-sacs and changing what I was saying. I was just struggling to say stuff. I was looking at these sentences, and there were some fairly not complicated, but there were a lot of specs and things that I needed to mention and get right. And I was just struggling to read the simplest sentences with a few numbers in them. And what I've found over these last 6 months is that, I think as I mentioned earlier, I'm being very self-critical of the way that I'm pronouncing things, the kind of all the noises and things that your mouth makes when you're talking, they're amplified massively to the point where when I'm talking, I'm not really I'm not really thinking about what I'm talking about. I'm much more focused on my vocal performance. which is ridiculous. And again, just to put some context around this, I've never, to my knowledge anyway, I've never seen a comment on my Mark Ellis YouTube channel where someone said, "That's, you sound dreadful," or why are you lazily pronouncing words, or whatever it might be. If anything, I do still find this a little bit uncomfortable. If anything, it's always the positive stuff. People are saying, "Oh, you got a good voice for radio." Don't know how to take that sometimes, but people are generally quite complimentary, which is a bit weird. But anyway, no one has ever said anything bad about it. So I know it's all in here. It's all in my head. And I know that's the case, again, because this morning I did an A-roll shoot and it was absolutely fine. I got through it in about 40 minutes, probably less actually. But there was something yesterday that I really, really struggled with. And I've thought about this a lot over the last few months. And I don't really know how to pinpoint the issue. I was talking to my girlfriend about it last night, and she said, "Is it something to do with the fact that you're now working with some big brands, and the channel has gone past the 100,000 mark? Are you putting too much pressure on yourself?" I don't even think it's that, because when I'm filming these videos, I don't think about those things. I don't really think about this. The video that I was filming yesterday, which I can't mention who it was, but I wasn't sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is for, I need to really nail this." I wasn't, because that pressure doesn't really exist. Well, it didn't really exist for that video because it wasn't sponsored. I wanted to make a bit of an impression, but it wasn't the thing that was at top of mind for me. So it's not that. It's not the fact that the channel's gone past 100,000 and I'm thinking people want to see a certain performance from me. It's a really strange thing, and I think it really is a case of me just getting in my own thoughts and obsessing over stuff which no one cares about. And what really did it for me last night is that I sat just before bed. I caught up on a few of my favorite YouTube channels, and I came across a studio tour of MKBHD, Marques Brownlee, his studio, which was undertaken by a guy called Gerald Undone. I don't know if you've heard of him, but in fact, go and check him out. He's brilliant. A Canadian who does lots of very in-depth camera reviews. He's very entertaining, though. He's a lovely guy. He was walking around Marquez's studio and interviewing him, and I just suddenly realized that Gerald speaks very quickly and doesn't always pronounce things properly. His pronunciation isn't always fantastic, but it doesn't matter. And I've never noticed it before, and he doesn't care. He just talks naturally. And I thought, hang on a minute. I've noticed this as well since with a lot of other creators who speak much quicker than I do, and like I say, perhaps don't always pronounce things right or whatever it might be. And you just realize that it doesn't matter. And then the question becomes, why am I so bothered about it? Why is it bothering me so much? And the problem with this, it's a genuine issue, because it does two things. One of the things it does is it dents your confidence. So yesterday was terrible. After that hour and a half of shooting, I was just drained and thinking, why is this happening to me? Even throughout that shoot, I mean, I haven't got the footage, thankfully, but maybe I should have kept it and done a highlights reel. But throughout the shooting, I was stopping and saying, "What's the matter with me? Why can't I say this sentence that is just the most normal sentence in the world with lots of normal, uncomplicated words in it? Why can't I just say it?" And equally, I can stand here for an hour and talk and not even think about how I'm saying things. Same thing with my newsletter. So it does that. It dents your confidence, because you start to think, can I still do this? The second thing it does is, because I ended up with 3 memory cards worth of stuff, of utter garbage basically, and some decent stuff, it took an age to edit, much longer than it would normally take. I didn't even put it through Gling AI, which is a way to speed up the editing process, because I thought even that, although it will do a good job of finding all the bad takes, sifting through all of that text and stuff is just going to be an absolute nightmare. So I didn't even do that. So it did two things. It dented my confidence, and it also really elongated the production process. And it's that latter thing. I mean, the confidence thing is big, but the production process, if you know me, I talk about this quite a bit on these live streams. I'm obsessed with process. The way that I make videos has to be quick. I have to get the filming done, editing done, publishing done in the same order, using the same steps each time. That's how I get so much content out, basically. So if anything gets in the way of that and slows me down, it's an issue, and it's a massive issue if it's me. If it's not a sponsor being slow to get back to me, or a piece of gear going wrong, if it's down to my own confidence sapping, or ineptitude in something, I get really frustrated. So, like I say, warts and all, this is something I'm working on at the moment. The reason I'm telling you about this, one, is because I want to be honest about what goes on behind the scenes with this stuff, and secondly, because if you go into this, and I used to think about this myself before I became a full-time content creator, or even before it was a side hustle. I used to watch my favorite YouTubers and think, oh, they must love doing that. This looks like such fun, just sitting there and talking about tech or whatever it might be. They must absolutely love it. It must be they must jump out of bed and just skip over to the camera, switch it on, and just love what they're doing. It's nothing like that at all. And the more YouTubers I've spoken to, the more I've realized it's quite a common thing. A lot of people who run YouTube channels and who seem to be very confident and, in the finished article look like they know exactly what they're doing and probably shot it in almost as much time it takes to watch it. You realize it's not actually the case. Quite often they have really struggled with that A-roll, which is encouraging because it means it's not just me. It's quite a common thing. But it's something to be aware of when you go into this sort of stuff. I do wish, in a way, that I'd known a bit about that. I kind of do and I kind of don't. I suppose if I did know about that, before I started Markerless Reviews, I may not have started it. Who knows? But I think it's nice to have an inkling of the fact that it's not all roses. One of the hardest things you're going to do is this: it's standing in front of a camera or sitting in front of a camera, talking to yourself. In a live stream environment, it is a bit different because it's more conversational. I think that's why this and my newsletter I don't struggle with, because it is a bit like talking to your mates. It doesn't feel quite as much of a performance. The more I think about it, I'm even thinking about it now, I'm working through it, I do think it's the performance element that is causing an issue. Because what often happens is that before I start recording my A-roll, the camera's off, obviously, or it's just on but not recording. I'll just look at the bullet points and just sit down and just quickly read off what I think I'm going to say. And 9 times out of 10, it's great. I say it very naturally. Then I hit record on the camera and it all falls apart because I've hit record on the camera and suddenly I'm performing. So that A-roll shoots are very tricky, and at the moment it's my least favorite part of this business. I'm really not enjoying them at all. Although, in fairness, I did enjoy a little bit more the one this morning because I just thought, no, I'm going to make this work. Get over yourself, Mark. Try and just approach this like you used to. Just enjoy it. So that this morning gave me a bit more confidence. But yeah, if you are looking at jumping into YouTube and thinking that's going to be the most enjoyable part of it, it probably won't be. There are exceptions to the rule, obviously, and there are people who enjoy doing the A-roll. There's a guy that I met recently, actually, another YouTuber. He loves it. He loves sitting down in front of the camera, and you can tell, actually. He loves doing that, and fair play to him. I wish I had that enthusiasm for A-roll, but I haven't. So we'll see what happens going forward. My voice is slowly going, so let me have a quick drink. And welcome on board, everyone. We do seem to have quite a nice bunch of nice group of people on here, as always, and the numbers looking all right as well. So, but over to questions, guys. So I did say at the start of this, hit me with as many questions as you like, and I will answer honestly, obviously. Lots of familiar faces on here. Right, let's just bring up some questions straight away and go. I never read these questions in advance, by the way. As soon as they appear on the screen, it's the first time I've read them. So I'm waiting for one to really embarrass me. Could that be you? Who knows? Jeff with a G. I love that name. Brilliant. Can a newbie YouTuber get by making videos with a phone camera? Yes, 100%. I think I've always said that gear doesn't matter. You can have a very expensive camera, or you can just have that. The content is what matters. It is a cliche, but it really is the content that matters. I think if you look at, again, someone like Mr. Beast, he spends millions on his videos, but a lot of that goes towards stuff that isn't gear. I think the impression I get, he spends a lot of money on access to things and big sets and stuff like that. But I've seen behind the scenes stuff with his channel, and he's got some really fairly run-of-the-mill DSLR cameras. He's not running red cameras and stuff like that, like, you know, Marques Brownlee. And he's got, what was it, 110 million subscribers, whatever it is. I probably got that wrong, completely wrong. But yeah, if all you've got, or equally, if all you want to use is a smartphone, because it is literally just point it at yourself and hit record, do it. Because one, it will speed up the production process. It will look absolutely fine. No one really cares. And then as you get bigger, you know, as the channel grows and you get a bit more confidence and perhaps a bit more money to spend on it, you may then find yourself hankering after a better camera, in which case you can upgrade. But yeah, just use your phone, Jeff, with a G, because it's absolutely fine. Dean, hi Mark, hi Dean. How do you deal with sponsors who want to have a say about your edits? How far do you go to satisfy them? Can it get awkward? I haven't had too many horrendous issues with this. Without naming names, I do know a couple of people who have, with some fairly big brands actually, to the point where the video ends up being this horrible mishmash of edits and requests on behalf of the brand, rather than what the YouTuber wanted in the first place, or recommended in the first place. And it should be the latter. You know, we, the creator, should dictate how the edit goes. The only thing we can't dictate, obviously, is the key information about the product. The things we should never get wrong are key information about the product, the target audience for that product, any of the marketing messages which the brand has. It's very important that you convey that stuff correctly. But as for everything else, in terms of how the video is made, what you say, how you say it, within reason, obviously, profanity and, you know, using questionable material and stuff, that's a no-no. But everything else is down to you. The creative element of each video, whether it's sponsored or not sponsored, is entirely down to the creator. I don't understand brands that don't get that, because the more they get involved in that process, the more like I mentioned a moment ago, the more the video is ruined. And the problem with that is that you lose the audience. Surely, if you want to get your product in front of as many people as possible, and as many correct, you know, right people as possible in terms of your target market for that product, you let that creator do what they know. Basically, leave the job to them of targeting that audience, because they know what they're doing. Just tell them what they need, you know, the key things about the product they need to get across. Let them get on with it. So a long way of answering that, Dean, but I haven't had too many instances of sponsors get too involved. There's been one or two recently where they've said, look, can you add, you know, these scenes into your video of using the product like this? And quite often they'll ask for that after you've shot the video, whereas what they should have done is ask you for that at the start. Or equally, maybe you should ask the questions, you know, what scenarios do you want to see this product in? When that happens, I'm forthright. I just say, look, we haven't got time to add those in. I think what you've got with that integration is the best we can do in the time. And equally, I'm really pleased with it. I think it shows off your product perfectly. Leave it to me, basically. And most brands are fine with that. In fact, they all are. I haven't really had an argument with a brand yet about this, or come to blows with them. So no, I've not experienced any awkwardness with that. And I do make it very clear from the start that I have to have full creative control. That's one of the things that is very important to me. So I think that probably helps, just setting that expectation right from the start, really. Alan, okay, can you explain the difference between A-roll and B-roll? Sorry, new to all this. No, don't apologize, Alan. This is the whole point of this channel. So A-roll, like I mentioned earlier, is me talking to the camera. So it's literally this. It could be in a studio setting. It could be walking around vlogging. You know, it could be anywhere basically. But the idea of A-roll is you talking to camera. B-roll is the stuff you layer on top of the A-roll. So while I'm talking to camera about an iPhone, I could layer that on top of that with some nice footage of that iPhone. And that footage without me in it is B-roll. You can be in B-roll as well, but it's not you talking. So if I'm talking again about a pair of headphones, talking to the camera, that's the A-roll. If it then cuts to me wearing the headphones and pretending to listen and do all that sort of stuff, then that is B-roll, basically. So a very simple way of looking at it is A-roll, you talking to camera, B-roll, all of the product footage, incidental stuff, things that you add to the video to make it more interesting and illustrate the product that you're talking about. Don't overdo B-roll. That's one thing. You can spend a lot of time on B-roll, both in terms of production style and also adding too much of it to the video. Try not to, because it can detract from what you're saying. And equally, getting very technical about filming B-roll just takes too much time. It's why I switched from static shots mainly on a tripod to holding the camera. Most of my B-roll footage, you'll notice, is handheld. It's a little bit shaky. One is because I like that style, but two, it's just quicker. It's much quicker to grab the camera and move it around and then set it up on a tripod, raise and lower the tripod, do pans and all that. It's a faff, personally. So yeah, keep it simple. Don't use too much of it. Lots of people coming in still. Hi guys, if you're just joining us. Oh, Greg's on the line. I always say on the line. This isn't a call, is it? Greg's joined the stream. Greg is a brilliant YouTuber himself. Really glad you're on, Greg. Greg interviewed me recently, actually, which is on his channel. Just Google Greg Priest or just stick it into YouTube. You'll find him very quickly. You'll find my interview on there. But he's got lots of YouTube advice himself. He will be appearing on a podcast on this channel. I promise, Greg, that is still in the can. It's still going to be used at some stage. Just everything's a bit behind at the moment. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Greg. Rob, pronunciation. You must have been hauled over the coals by the interwebs for Linux. Yes. Put some context around this. Linux. I've got to the stage with that operating system. I don't actually know which one is the right pronunciation. I think it's Linux, isn't it, Rob? Or is it like? I used to always call it Linux. It is Linux. Interesting point on this is that I do often say it. To be fair, whenever I mispronounce something, it's normally by accident. But there are a lot of YouTubers who do this on purpose. So they'll purposefully mispronounce something just to get people saying stuff. Because if people start saying stuff in the comments, the algorithm loves it. So, but yeah, in fact, people weren't too bad about that, about Linux/Linux. I was let off quite lightly, which is a shame. Rob says, what happened to the AutoQ experiment? It's basically in the corner of the room, not being used anymore. So I used, if no one was aware of this, I used an AutoQ for probably, it was a good 2 or 3 months, I think. Because again, I was getting to the point before that where I was starting to get I was losing confidence a bit doing the kind of reading from the bullet points for my A-roll. So I thought, okay, let's give an AutoQ a try. So I bought an AutoQ. They're brilliant things, by the way, these days. But you basically buy this AutoQ that sits in front of your camera, any camera, and then you can put your iPad or your iPhone, or any smartphone, obviously, beneath it, and there's a mirror which mirrors whatever's on your iPhone and shows you it. So on your iPhone, you'd have the script, basically. So your traditional kind of like TV news style AutoQ reading, you stare at the camera, you can see the script, you read it off, and to the audience, it looks like you're still looking at them. But what you're actually doing is reading from the script. Now, I went into that very, very naively. I thought, that sounds quite straightforward. It's just reading stuff. Turns out it's a real skill, which with hindsight is obvious. You don't become a newsreader overnight, but you do realize how good these people are at doing this. The people that are doing reading the news or on shows where they're not clearly, but they're reading from an AutoQ, but you have no idea they're doing it. That's such a skill, because I found straight away that my eyes were doing that. And again, it feels very unnatural. Suddenly, you've got these words in front of you that you're supposed to try and read and keep up with. And the problem with that, actually, coming back to Rob's question, is that I thought it came across as being very robotic, because I was suddenly reading from a script. And yeah, I just didn't like it. I got shot of it. Not good enough at it. And also, I just don't think it suited the style of the channel, really. Quick drink. Greg, I'm trying to work on the same thing. We're being too hard on ourselves and making our lives hell during the edit. That's really nice to know that you've got the same challenge, Greg. I think, like I mentioned a moment ago, I think we're not alone. I think a lot of YouTubers have this issue, but it does create havoc during the edit. And it's got to the stage now where I know, and whenever you edit your A-roll, when in my Final Cut Pro course on Skillshare, I talk about the fact that you need to get very proficient at reading the waveform of you speaking, because you can very quickly spot. Well, you can see the gaps, obviously, but you very quickly spot where you've said the same line 13 times because the waveform looks exactly the same each time. And some of them kind of tail off, some of them finish with this massive peak, which is you swearing at yourself. And eventually you find the correct one. But I've got to the point now with some of those A-roll shoots, like that one yesterday, where I know I've said the same thing. And in some of the stuff yesterday, I was saying the same sentence probably 30 times. That's how bad it was. But I could see the waveforms. But again, like Greg says, messing around with that in the edit is an absolute faff, and it takes time that you should be spending on other stuff. So, Greg, I'm with you. I know exactly how it is. It's not much fun. I won't butcher your name, so I won't try and pronounce your name, but thanks for the question. It's been a while. What's your favorite coffee? Well, is it my favorite coffee? It probably is. My favorite coffee is cappuccino because I'm just fairly boring. The one thing I do love, I've been really enjoying recently, is pour over coffee at home. So I bought one of those, kind of quite a cheap one, but a pour over coffee pot thing where you stick the lid on and you put your coffee in it, and then you gently pour over hot water. That's if you like coffee and you've not tried that before, it does genuinely taste much nicer. If you grind your own beans and do all that stuff, it's worth the effort basically. But day to day, I am a cappuccino man. I really am. Although I need to drink less coffee. David, the everyday dad, the tech chap, and I, Justine, had their own presentation styles. I was taught by a chap called Andy Harrington the basics of speaking either to camera or to an audience. Confidence. It is confidence. It really, really is. And I feel confident doing this. This comes from a lot of spending time doing sales presentations and stuff at work previously, but in a previous life. So I'm used to doing this. I don't mind it. I enjoy doing this. It excites me. But there is something occasionally about the A-roll shoots that you lose confidence, or I lose confidence. And I'm pretty sure those three people there, I don't know this for definite, but I bet those three people there have the same issue. Justine's been doing it arguably for the longest out of those three, I think. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they have similar challenges. I hope they do. Anyway, let's keep the questions coming in, guys. I'm getting to the end of these ones, but ask me anything. Honestly, just go for it. Alan, exciting unboxing going on whilst listening. Hohem, how do you pronounce that? Oh, an iSteady M6 gimbal. Nice. Gimbals. That's quite an interesting topic. I've got a gimbal somewhere. There's a DJI gimbal over in the corner somewhere. Never used it in this setting. I've used it in the past for other stuff. But again, coming back to the whole process thing and the whole thing about keeping processes simple and making sure you can churn out videos pretty quickly in the nicest and most high quality way. Gimbals for me scare me to death with that, because you have to balance the camera. Okay, you get beautiful footage from it. And Alan, I'm sure, I don't want to you just got your new purchase. I don't want to make you feel bad about it and so on. That this isn't the purpose of this, but this is my opinion of gimbals. It's more my inefficiency and my inexperience with them, I suppose, really, is that there's a lot of setting up that you need to do. But they do produce good footage. And there is occasionally, there's been times recently where I've thought that would have been better on a gimbal, or that would have been easier on a gimbal. If I'm trying to get a nice kind of panning shot, having some foreground interest and then focusing on the actual thing in the background, doing that handheld sometimes looks a bit rubbish. Enjoy your gimbal, Alan, which you will. I'm sure it's fantastic. Alan, I've heard that Rode microphones don't work well with Sony cameras. What is your experience? Every video that on the Mark Ellis Reviews channel for the last 18 months, maybe slightly longer, has been shot on a Sony camera with a Rode microphone. Never had an issue. I'm not sure what those. Do you know what those problems are, Alan? I don't know if you can expand on what the common problems are, apparently, but I've never had an issue with it. I guess it depends on the camera, but it probably depends more so on the type of Rode mic. The one that I use, if you're interested, is the Video Mic Pro Plus, which is their kind of slightly more expensive run and gun one. Technically, it is a run and gun mic. You're not really supposed to. Most people who are really kind of, I suppose, finicky about this stuff wouldn't use that in a studio setting. They'd want to use a shotgun mic like that one I've got up here. I don't care though. It sounds fine, and it's quick. It's easy to work. Easy to use. Alan said, being too loud and distortion. They are a bit hot. That's a good point, actually. There is. I don't know if this is. I mean, this probably isn't just down to Sony cameras. I don't know, but there is an issue with gain, definitely. And I think that the one thing I would say about some of my videos is that they do occasionally peak. I can't get around that because and this does relate to what you're saying, actually. The volume on the FX3 that it's connected to, the gain basically is turned right down as much as you want to comfortably, really. And I think the Rode mic itself, I've reduced the gain on that as well. Basically, it can't go any lower, yet you still get these peaks. The dream would be to have a mic like that with 32-bit float, which means you can it's a bit like recording raw audio, so you can shout into your mic or speak very quietly, and you don't lose any of the detail, and you don't get distortion. And all. It's a terrible explanation of it, but 32-bit float is the dream. You probably can get on-camera shotgun mics with that sort of stuff built in, but if they exist, I've not found one yet. Generally speaking, that is a setup where you'd have a separate recorder. But it's a happy medium anyway. I've not really experienced too many issues, if any, really. Again, it just works. Alan's come back to me about the gimbal. Have I upset you about the gimbal, Alan? Could be a video on why I don't use gimbals, or do a video on your vlog process. I think you use a mixture of iPhone and DJI action cameras plus wireless mics. Yeah, so any of the vlog videos that I've done, which I've done for Patreon members. I've not done many recently, but that's where that all started, really. But that vlogging style has crept into the main Mark Ellis Reviews channel. So a lot of my recent reviews have been vlog style, with me walking around talking to a camera. I think I spoke about this 2 or 3 weeks ago on one of these live streams, that one of the biggest things I've learned about doing those, producing those kind of videos, is that you have to keep things simple. So to begin with, I was taking my FX3. Let me just grab it. So I was literally walking around streets and towns and cities and things with this, which is the FX3, not this lens, to be fair. I was using the lens that's on this camera, but with this camera, this mic, attached to this PGY Tech little tripod thing, which is absolutely brilliant, by the way. Just very quickly, very simple to attach your camera to it, but more importantly, you can use it as a kind of vlogging thing like that, or you can swing out these legs and use it as a traditional little tripod, which is very nice. Or you can flick out this thing here, put those back in, and you can hang it from all sorts of things. So if you've got like a railing or a fence or something that you want to do a kind of shot where you're balancing it on something, this hooks very securely onto all sorts of things, and you can get very interesting shots, and you can just use this thing everywhere. So that's brilliant. That was never the issue. But the issue was carrying this massive thing around, which, okay, you get lovely footage, it looks fantastic, but one, it's really expensive, and if you get mugged, it's not great anyway, but it's going to be even less great if you've got this with you. And secondly, you have to worry about things like ND filters and getting your exposure right, and it's a real faff. And again, the post-production stuff takes longer because you've got to put your LUT on it, you've got to do color grading, etc., etc. So basically, I stopped doing that because it was too much hassle. Instead, and as Alan has mentioned, I've switched to using either my iPhone. I've done quite a few videos that feature iPhone footage that you may not even have noticed, actually, because it's not that obvious. So good are these phones, as we were saying earlier, or action cam. So I've been using the DJI Osmo action cam, and that was a revelation, because that is it's over there. I won't bother going to get it, but it's this tiny little thing, literally about that big, with amazing stabilization, great 4K footage, a surprisingly good mic. You can get away with that mic in all sorts of situations. And more importantly, it's so inconspicuous. Compared to that thing, it's tiny, and no one cares. As long as the content is good, it doesn't matter. But in conjunction with that, occasionally I do use DJI's mics. They're little lapel mics that you can attach to yourself via magnets. But yeah, just keep it simple. Keep it as simple as possible, particularly with vlogging. David, Porsche Taycan, Jaguar XE, BMW M2. Where are you on the electric car thing? I love the fact you've got a BMW M2 in that list. which is my daily driver, actually, weirdly enough. Where am I with the electric car thing? That's a really good question. I'm not anywhere with it at the moment, really. So I reviewed the Taycan. I also had a BYD, which stands for Build Your Dreams, a BYD Atto 3 on loan for about a week. That appeared in another video that I made. Really enjoyed that, actually. Really enjoyed the Taycan as well, but that's way out of my price range. I've kind of stopped for the moment because there's been too many other things going on. But we are due a car change for our family car, and I'm still tempted to go electric, but I'm not sure yet. So yeah, I don't know. I'll see if any more review units. It's weird to call cars review units, but if any more review units come up in that space, and then I can perhaps check something out. But I thought about Tesla for a while. Now I'm not so sure. No, not for any bad reason. I just think there's other options, really. Or we might just get a. This is turning into a car chat, isn't it? We might just get a hybrid, possibly, or we may stick with petrol. Who knows? We will see. But the M2 is going nowhere. Literally, it's normally on my drive. Any other questions, guys? Where are we? 41 minutes. I'm trying to think if there's any other updates I can give you. One thing I will quickly mention is something that has been a challenge recently, and if you're on the mailing list for the Mark Ellis Reviews newsletter, you'll have been aware of this, particularly this week, is the issue with trying to just think of the best way to explain this. The issue with that channel growing, which has been that it has attracted naturally more opportunities with bigger brands, and there's been 2 or 3 things that have happened recently, including one thing which was related to that horrible aroll shoot yesterday, that is absolutely humongous, and I want to talk about, and I want to tell you guys about, but I can't. And I filmed I shot the Mark Ellis Reviews newsletter a couple of days ago, and wanted to talk about these things, but couldn't. But equally wanted to mention the fact that they were happening. And I watched it back and thought it wasn't arrogant, but it came across as being a bit irritating. And I think I even referenced this during the video, that I know this is annoying for someone to keep saying, I wish I could tell you about this, but I can't. You're going to have to wait 2 weeks. I watched it back and just thought that's a challenge, because you go from being this YouTuber who doesn't get in with those big brands and is a bit more kind of rogue and, having to buy everything himself and not watching events and things with everyone else, all that sort of stuff, to go to actually being potentially at events or getting within embargo lists and stuff like that. My worry with that is that you then become detached from that YouTuber that you were previously, yet you still want to grow, which means getting into those things. So it's a real fine line, a real balance. You don't want to come across as being higher than, or almighty and higher than thou. You want to still be the everyman tech reviewer, but it's a really weird balance. It's something which I'm encountering more now, which is amazing. And I'm very proud of the fact that's happening, because it is a reflection, like I say, of the business growing and the YouTube channel getting more views and getting more subscribers. I don't know if you can hear all the traffic outside, sorry. But it's tricky. It's really difficult to balance, to make that, to tread that line, I suppose, is the best way of putting this. Alan says, please don't go electric. The depreciation is horrendous, and VW have just stopped their production for a while. That's interesting, Alan. I didn't know VW had stopped. This is part of the reason I'm not sure what to do, because I've heard all sorts of things. I've got some friends in the automotive industry, and they're very down about it. So that has made me think twice, definitely. It was all electric car speak now in the chat. David, electric cars are about 30% heavier than the petrol equivalent and are breaking up the roads. Doesn't sound too good for electric cars, really, does it? Alan, I'm going to start a channel soon, and I did my first filming in London yesterday with a GoPro and Rode Wireless Go. It worked great. That is awesome to hear, Alan. I'd love to know how you found it. If you found it, was it? Did it surprise you what it was like to do that vlogging? If it's I don't know if this was your first rodeo when it came to doing this stuff, but like I was saying earlier, doing it versus thinking about it is always very different. So I'd love to know how you found the process of doing that sort of vlogging. But yeah, way to go. Just keep doing it, Alan. There's nothing better than getting that sort of stuff done and in the can, and then getting it into your edit suite and going through it, because it's always better than you thought it was. I don't know if you found this, but I always find with vlogging that I spend a day walking around somewhere talking to myself, and I always finish it thinking, That was terrible. I'm going to have to redo it. I'm going to have to just revert back to the studio. And it's never the case. It's always better than I thought it was. But that's awesome, Alan. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you going to the movies? Barbie or Oppenheimer? Oppenheimer. That is how you pronounce that, isn't it? It is Oppenheimer, isn't it? Definitely the latter. 100. That looks really good, by the way. It's got all of my favorite people in it as well. So at some stage, I'm going to go and see that, definitely. Rob, what was the significance of yesterday's Mark Ellis Reviews video as alluded to on the newsletter? You said that both this week's videos were important. I get the Beats one, but not so much the shocks. It wasn't the shocks one, Rob. I probably didn't explain that properly in the newsletter. The Beats one was huge, and I can talk about this briefly now. So if you weren't aware, I reviewed the Beats Studio Pro yesterday on the channel. Was it yesterday? Or was it Wednesday? Anyway, this week I reviewed those headphones. This is a really big release for Beats. It's been 6 years since their last headphone release, and I got onto the embargo list. I didn't seek this out at all. It came to me directly, came to me passively. But Beats/Apple, it was actually an Apple employee, got in touch and said, look, we'd love to get you a pair of these to review before the release. And there's a press call that you can come on and get a press briefing, which happened last week. Huge, massive for this business. I was talking to someone else about this last night, actually, a YouTuber friend, and I said, it's amazing, but equally, and this might sound a bit arrogant, but I don't care, there's also an element of, yeah, I should be on these lists, because the amount of work I've put into headphone reviews on Mark Ellis Reviews and the amount of views and engagement I've generated for those type of products is colossal, actually, certainly for my channel size. And it's important that I'm recognized by that. And by being recognized, I mean getting in early with reviews, because if you get in early with reviews, you can get those reviews out on time, when the product's released, when the interest is right at its peak, and help people make that buying decision. So it was huge, but equally I did think, good. I'm glad this is, I've been noticed in that way. The second video that I was talking about, Rob, wasn't the shocks video. It was the video that I shot the aroll for yesterday and I had all those issues with. But the reason for this video is for something next week. Now, Rob can probably if you work it out in your head, Rob, please don't put it in the chat, because I've signed the scariest NDA ever, but it's relating to something next week. And I had a very big opportunity this week, basically, which and the video comes out on Wednesday next week. Don't say anything in the chat. Alan, shocks sounds great, but blimey, they're expensive. They are quite expensive, to be fair. Yeah, some of them are pretty pricey. I'll give you that. But you do get a lot for your money with shocks, to be fair. I sound like their salesperson now, don't I? I promise you I'm not. Alan says, go to Indiana. I've seen the Indiana Jones film. I went to see it a couple of weeks ago. Really good. It's a bit like a greatest hits of Indiana Jones films, which it was always going to be, I suppose, really. But it's great, and he can still do it, which is just amazing. If I'm like that at his age, I won't be, but if I am, I'll be happy. Alan, GoPro and Rode Wireless Go sounds like my way forward for a driving channel I'm planning for. It is, yeah. So if you're looking to do any kind of driving content, that kind of setup is perfect. Rather than, I mean, technically you could have a camera like this for car stuff where you mount it. It sounds ridiculous, but you could mount, do a Top Gear, for instance, or a Grand Tour, and have this stuff mounted on your windscreen. That's expensive, probably slightly dangerous, unless you know what you're doing. Wouldn't recommend that. Instead, get yourself a GoPro or a DJI Osmo Action, and get one of those kind of suction cup mounts for the windscreen. That's all I've used. Stick your camera on there. Try out the mic on that might be okay, but just to get the best audio possible, get yourself a little lapel mic on here, and away you go. That's not illegal. So I can't speak for other countries, but in the UK, it's not illegal. As long as you're still got both hands on the steering wheel and you're engaged with your driving, you can talk to a camera. That's no problem at all. But yeah, definitely keep the cost low in terms of the production. Is it the Samsung Z Fold 5? No, Jeff, I can't. There's nothing. I can't talk about this stuff, and I can neither confirm nor deny that that is what I'm talking about. It could literally be anything, this video that I'm talking about. Any brand, any product. Alan, I have a GoPro and a Sony A7C. A Sony A7C is a great little camera. I've used one. I've not owned one, but I have used one before. That's a really good choice for lots of reasons, actually. But GoPros, those size cameras are just fantastic. My voice is still going, guys. Excuse me. All right, we're coming towards the end, but I will take any last questions if they're there. Any other remaining questions? We seem to have had more people attending today, which is great. I do want to trial another Saturday live, I think, and perhaps try it earlier. I will do a later one as well, because I have had some feedback from the US audience who, at the moment, it's morning and they're probably getting ready for work or working. So apologies if that's the case, but I will try a different time. But yeah, any last questions, guys, before I shoot off and crack on with the weekend? Although I am working tomorrow because I need to, but yeah, it is still the weekend, so I can still have some fun at some stage, hopefully. I'm just going to scroll through and see if I've missed any questions. It always bothers me that I might have done. I always say that I'm not just saying this because you lot are here, but it is the questions that make these videos more interesting. So thank you for asking them. No, I think we're all there, guys. So thank you so much, firstly, for coming on. And yeah, if, like I mentioned at the start of this video, if you haven't checked out the Substack newsletter, there's a link down below. And I will see you hopefully next week at the same time next week. And yeah, if you've got any other questions for me, there is an email address in the description. You can always get hold of me directly if you want to. I am a bit slow with replying to emails, but I will try and get back to you as soon as I can. But no, cheers, guys. Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic weekend, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Cheers.